Welcome to today's session. My name is Catherine Blewett. I'm the Chief Strategic Engagement Officer with the Ocean Frontier Institute in Canada. I'd like to say Happy International Day for Women and Girls in Science today. I'd like to let you know that the session is simultaneously translated in French. To change the language, please click on the little Earth icon and pick the French option. In addition, we're also broadcasting this session live on Facebook for those of you who are unfortunately not able to connect to the Zoom virtual room due to the space limit. I would say it's an amazing problem to have. We've had over 1,300 people register for today's session. The United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, or our Ocean Decade, has just begun with a truly important aim to enhance international cooperation. To achieve ocean science collaboration, we require the participation of all sectors and communities working together in a transformational, large-scale, and innovative campaign to mainstream, advance, and to accelerate ocean science. This effort needs to cut across geographies, cultures, and generations, and to recognize and dismantle barriers to gender equity in ocean science. We hope for long-lasting and impactful change. Ensuring diversity and gender equity is essential to unlocking opportunities for all members of society. It is key to fostering the transformation in ocean science that we need to support sustainable development. Today's session is co-organized by Fisheries and Ocean Canada and the Canadian Commission for United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization with the support of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, also known to you as UNESCO. An Ocean Decade virtual series has been developed, and we are delighted that our session has been included as part of that. Before we get started, I'd like to share some useful information and just make sure you know how to participate in the discussion today. The session will be recorded. A link to access the recording will also be shared on the Ocean Decade event webpage after the event. We are anxious for your questions, and you'll have your opportunity to ask them. And we'd encourage you actually to share your questions throughout the talks rather than waiting for the Q&A session. To submit a question, please use the Q&A function or post it as a comment in Facebook. I encourage you to include your name as well as identify a panelist who you would like your question directed to. And finally, at the end of our session, we will have a short virtual dive hosted by Erica Woolsey, CEO of the Hydrus. And I invite you to stick around for this short activity, and I'm sure it's going to amaze and truly inspire you for today. So to open our discussion, we have the pleasure of today having Ambassador Natasha Kayer, Canada's ambassador and permanent representative to UNESCO. She was previously the Canadian ambassador to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, based in Vienna, and has been part of the Canadian Diplomatic Corps for many years. Ambassador Kayer, over to you.
Thank you, Catherine, and welcome to everyone who's joining us across the world. I'm very happy to address you today on this day, the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. As we begin the Ocean Decade that has been announced, the Ocean Decade focused on science with the motto, Ocean Science, the ocean we need for the future we want. It is essential to highlight the important role women scientists must play in sustaining our world and ensuring a sustainable future. Led by the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission based here in UNESCO, the decade will play a preeminent role in promoting the health and sustainability of our oceans in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Some of you might wonder why I was so excited by the invitation to participate in today's event. And I must tell you that as a student, I myself had read a work that changed my worldview that had been written, in fact, by a young marine biologist from the United States. Her name was Rachel Carson, and the book was called Silent Spring. And through that book, Carson brought the attention of the world to the issue of chemical use and runoff and the effect it was having on our land and our oceans. It was an incredible awakening, and it had very big impact, and transformative change was affected by it. I was inspired by her work, and I can't help but feel that having done this in a heavily male-dominated environment, and the fact that she was challenging those norms may have also impacted her questioning of assumptions being made by the scientific community and by the world more generally about pesticide use and other agrochemical use. The fact of the matter is, it made her a much bolder individual, and in doing so, she was able to affect incredible change and was part of the launching of the ecological movement. The reality today is different from what Rachel Carson was facing, but not by that much. These days, only a quarter of STEM jobs are actually filled by women, even if the numbers are slightly better in the ocean sciences at about 38%. It's obvious that there's still a massive amount of work to be done in order to achieve gender equity and gender parity in the ocean sciences. We still have situations where women are discouraged from pursuing careers in STEM and in ocean sciences because of the lack of role models, the lack of mentors, and from, we have to say, conscious and unconscious bias that still exists against them. Nevertheless, we are making progress. And for Canada, we want to engage with Unesco as much as possible to help ensure that more progress is made during this UN Ocean Decade. La décennie des océans mise sur un processus participatif pour apporter les plus grands bénéfices à l'écosystème océanique et à les sociétés humaines. Et là, les femmes doivent faire partie de cette conversation. Nous sommes convaincus et nous travaillerons spécifiquement pour promouvoir la participation active des femmes et des filles dans les sciences océaniques dans le cadre de cette décennie. C'est dans cet esprit qu'en travaillant avec Pêche et Océan Canada et la Commission canadienne pour l'Unesco, nous avons décidé de collaborer afin de promouvoir l'équité des genres tout au long de la décennie. En effet, saisissons cette opportunité pour rendre l'enseignement supérieur, la formation professionnelle et les carrières dans les sciences océaniques plus attractifs pour les femmes et pour les filles. Nous avons l'obligation de le faire afin d'encourager les futures Rachel Carson. Merci beaucoup de votre attention et je vous souhaite à tous une très bonne discussion aujourd'hui. Merci.
Merci. Thank you very much, Ambassador Kayer. You've just given us wonderful context for our discussion. The UN decade, it presents us with such a unique opportunity to make long-lasting changes that perhaps Rachel Carson thought of those many years ago. I'd like to now invite Dr. Christine Inzi, Program Specialist at IOC at UNESCO, and she's the focal point on gender issues, to share her perspective on the ambitions of the decade for gender equity, and to share some insights on the positive impacts that can be expected from having more women and girls participating in the Ocean Decade. Dr. Inzi?
Thank you very much for this very nice introduction, and I'm very happy to be here with you, with so many of you, at this very important day for women and girls in science, and for us it's ocean science. And if you could please show my slides. Is that possible? Otherwise, I share my screen. Okay, perfect. If you could go to the first slide and make it maybe presentable. So I'm here now talking really to empower girls and women in ocean science in my capacity as a program specialist at IOC, but also really as a gender focal point for the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of Unesco, which was tasked with the coordination of the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And to start, this decade has a vision, and this is the science we need for the ocean we want, which is supported by the mission of transformative ocean science solutions for sustainable development, connecting people and our ocean. So connecting women, men, everybody with our ocean. This vision and mission are supported by 7 decade outcomes. And under those, we then have 10 ocean decade challenges and decade objective. And then it comes to us to make that real within the decade actions. And for those decade actions, we need each and everybody to be included. All talents are needed to really develop those solutions for a sustainably managed ocean. If we leave out half of the society, then we will never be able to really reach the vision, to achieve the mission, and also to approach the decade outcomes, meet the challenges we have in front of us. Next slide, please. So far in the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we have 17 goals. And within those 17 goals, goal 14 is on the ocean. It's on life below water. But until now, SDG 14 is rather silent on gender, yet women play a critical role really in ocean science, in fisheries, in the resource conservation of our marine ecosystems. And so the decade provides us with a unique opportunity really to connect SDG 5 on the gender equality with SDG 14 on ocean matters. Next slide, please. To give some baseline data as well and some background maybe, where are we actually in terms of gender equality within ocean science? Do we have equal participation? Just in December 2020, we at IOC launched the Global Ocean Science Report, where we give a rather large overview about women in ocean science. Where are we? And we found out that gender equality in ocean science is still to be reached. We have female ocean science personnel ranges between 7% in some countries to 75% in of all ocean science personnel in the country. However, there are also some good news. The percentage of female ocean science personnel is equal or even higher than 50% in some countries, particularly Angola, Bulgaria, Croatia, El Salvador, Ireland, Poland, and Turkey. So we have to get more of those champions, more of those countries who are really active in promoting women in ocean science and girls. It starts with the girls. Only if we have young women interested in ocean science, we will also have them growing and being leader in ocean science. Next slide, please. Next, sorry. One of the key findings is, however, that there's more equal gender balance in ocean science than in science overall. Female scientists comprise about 39% of all ocean scientists, which is 11% actually higher than what we have and what we found in reports for science in general. So we are on a good track. Next slide, please. However, there's one important issue to consider. Women start equally with men in the early careers in ocean science, but then there's this problem, this phenomenon of a leaking pipeline. When women continue their education, when women and girls continue to be involved in ocean science, they drop out. And this is due to a framework which is just not made fit for purpose. We don't have the support, we don't have the this environment of supporting women in ocean science. And so we lose a huge potential on the way of knowledge, a huge potential of new findings. And so it's important that during the decade, we encourage women with good examples, with an environment which is prepared to support them throughout their careers, and also that women and men support young women with mentoring programs to really enable them to be part of the ocean science community. Next slide, please. So we hope that at the end of 2030, we don't have a leaking pipeline anymore, and then that we don't have this drop of women who want to stay involved but can't because this environment is just not prepared for their needs. Next slide, please. So for girls and women empowerment in ocean science, we have quite a few challenges now in 2021 at the beginning of the decade, but those can turn into opportunities for science, for solutions for our ocean. We found in the Global Ocean Science Report that female scientists are still underrepresented in many categories of ocean science, particularly in those related to technology development and ocean observation. The achievement of SDG 14 clearly requires more women to take part also in this governance and policy framework around the ocean science and ocean protection. We need to move beyond what has been documented in the educational achievements of women, translating this into equity and participation in policy and governance frameworks, and into more strategic decisions about inclusivity and mainstreaming of gender equality in ocean science, management, conservation, intervention, policy, and treaty negotiations. So we have this opportunity now that decade programs and projects mainstream gender equality activities in their proposals, in their actions. Action for women in ocean science. Ocean science capacity building needs to focus on the needs as well. It needs to focus on those fields where we miss women. And we have to include gender equality into the SDG 14 dialogue, so that we lead that this will hopefully lead to a shift from equality blindness to equality activating policies in the ocean area, in the ocean science field. Of course, all those activities must be culture sensitive, and because there's definitely not one fits all. Where people come from, where we already have some framework. So we have to really tailor our activities to what we already have in place, so that we really create an enabling framework. And it's, as I said, it's a challenge, but this can be a great opportunity to really ensure equal participation of girls and women in ocean science during the next decade and further on. And I would like to finish my short intervention with the last slide, really showing a few women and men, or quite a few, who I met throughout the past years and who are really inspiring. And there are a lot of lead and role models I'm looking up to, and they continue to inspire me. And I hope that everybody has such a great environment in the future to really grow in ocean science. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Izenze. What an inspirational overview. And I have to say, just speaking of inspiration, I've been monitoring the chat a little bit, and we are seeing participation from all over the globe, which is just fantastic. So your message is resonating around the planet. So now we're going to have an opportunity to hear from each of our panelists. And I thought we would begin as we are going to end today, as we hear from Dr. Erica Woolsey. Dr. Woolsey is a coral reef scientist, a National Geographic explorer, and a leader of the Hydrus, a nonprofit dedicated to translating marine science into public understanding. And she is going to very kindly take us on an adventure at the end of our session. So women and girls have a central role to play in driving innovation to achieve the Sustainable Development Agenda. And it starts at the very moment that a girl is inspired to take action. The mission of the Hydrus is to create open access, oceans for all, to generate an ocean connection and stewardship by leveraging innovative technologies. Dr. Woolsey, can you share your thoughts with us about how as a woman you can encourage innovation and how you think that will really inspire youth and more specifically young women?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So at the Hydrus, we're focused on outcome number 7 of the decade of ocean science, which is to create an inspiring and engaging ocean. And we can do that with storytelling and public engagement. We're very interested in translating scientific discovery in our ocean into public understanding. And one of those tools is emerging technology, including immersive virtual reality. So this is an example of a virtual reality headset that if you put it on, and of course we have a dive mask here to play with that comparison. And if you put it on, you can have an immersive experience where you can look all around you and actually feel like you're underwater. And so one of the biggest problems with ocean conservation and science learning is that disconnection between people and our ocean, and how ocean environments are inaccessible to most. And I love taking people diving. I love being a dive master or a kayak guide and taking people into the ocean. But I can't take everyone into the ocean. So we're trying to use scalable emerging technologies to take the ocean to everybody. And these technologies are becoming more and more accessible. And of course, we also have things like smartphones that can be used in cardboard viewers. But I do want to say, when I think about technology, I think about access and equity, because, I mean, having the Zoom meeting here and having this internet for us all to connect from all over the world is absolutely incredible. And technology can encourage more participation and move towards equity. But I also want to point out that technology and different interventions, if they're not truly human-centered and do not take into account all stakeholders, then it can lead to greater disparities and less access for some. And something I did want to point out is that if technology is not created by women and underrepresented by minorities, then those technologies will share the same biases as their creators or as the data that train them, for instance. And so it's really important to have that representation at all levels. And when it comes to representation and access, we have to remember that people inhabit multiple identities at once. And we should be very careful not to paint with broad strokes when we talk about women in science, because, for instance, in the United States, while we have about 25% representation of women in science fields, that is much smaller for women of color. I think it's close to something like 5% representation. And so when we think about women in science, we should also think about women of color in science, or LGBTQIA women in science, or women with disabilities in science. And so it's very important to, when we talk about access and equity and meeting people where they're at and identifying needs, to remember that technology is engaging and it provides access, but we should also make sure that it represents everybody.
Thank you very, very much. And, you know, it's a great message we often hear about diversity and inclusion, but a diverse workforce, for example, or a diverse sector, unless people are truly included, I'm not sure it totally furthers the goals. Look, thank you so much for that, Dr. Woolsey. And I would like to turn now, if I can, to introduce Jasmine Graham. She's the CEO of Minorities in Shark Sciences. And I just want to pause there because I have to say, Jasmine, as I was reading your introduction, it is just the coolest area of focus. And I think your passion for sharks is one shared by some of your panelists that you'll meet today. So in addition to her work as a shark scientist, Jasmine is an environmental educator and actually project coordinator for the Mars Science Project, which is focused on researching and promoting the best practices to recruit, to support, and to retain minority students in marine science. I wonder if I might turn to you, Jasmine, because thinking about your work, it really encompasses scientific communication, but also social justice, education, and you touch on conservation. I wonder if you might talk a little bit about the work of Minorities in Shark Science and maybe tell us a little bit about what motivated you to start this network.
Sure. So yes, one of the big things that Dr. Woolsey just touched on is when we're thinking about gender equity, you can't ignore the intersectionality that exists between being a woman and being a person of color. It is a really unique situation that presents its own challenges. And one of the reasons why we started Minorities in Shark Sciences is because that's something that we feel like needed to be dealt with in its own way, because there are things kind of piling on top of each other. Not only are women of color faced with gender discrimination, we're faced with racial discrimination, and that creates a plethora of different situations. And so we are really passionate about getting women and girls of color interested in marine science. I think a lot of times people like to just assume that people of different racial backgrounds, they're not in marine science because they don't want to be. And that's not the case. And MISS has proved that because we have over 200 members in 18 different countries. And so if you say women of color don't exist in shark science because there's a lack of interest, you are clearly mistaken because there's a lot of interest. And so Kristen talked about this leaky pipeline. And one of the reasons why I started MISS with my co-founders is because I am a leak. I finished my master's degree and I largely stepped out of scientific research. I still do a bit of it, but I focus most of my attention on conservation and environmental justice and social justice issues. And the world science is not quite ready for me yet. And so when we talk about diversity, we talk about having different people at the table. But if you bring people to the table and then you don't let them speak, there is no point in them being at the table. And so that's the situation that has largely been what women of color are facing. We're told you're lucky to be here. You're lucky to be part of this. We're letting you be here and you should be satisfied with that. And I'm not satisfied with that. We want a voice. It's not enough for us to be sitting at the table and being ignored. And so what Minorities in Shark Sciences did, we said, okay, if the table isn't ready for us, we will make another table. And so we made a table, and hoping that people will start to recognize that there are women of color interested in science and that we're being pushed out. So the example of the leaky pipeline kind of implies that it's a passive thing, when in fact it's not. I've talked to lots of women that are part of Minorities in Shark Sciences, a lot of them that left for very specific reasons, and they were pushed out. So it's less of a pipeline and more of a cliff that some people are getting pushed off of. And so we're really passionate about opening doors, connecting women of color with networks. There's a lot of research done that shows that people of color, women of color in particular, have a more difficult time finding mentors. They have a more difficult time getting hired. They have a more difficult time accessing networks. They have a more difficult time negotiating for fair compensation. And so one of those things is if you isolate people and you make them feel like they're isolated and they are alone, and that they haven't earned their place, it makes them feel small. And so we are an organization that wants to bring people together and say, you are not alone. You are not the only person going through this. You do not deserve to be treated like this. We can do better as science, and we will do better. And so that's kind of what our passion is, because if we don't have diversity in scientists, we don't have diversity in thought. And if we don't have diversity in thought, where is the innovation going to come from? And clearly, we have a lot of problems in the ocean sciences that we're dealing with, particularly with sharks and their relatives. We're losing shark species at an alarming rate. People can't figure out, how do we stop this? How do we change the way that the direction of these species is going? How do we save all these endangered species? And if you're asking questions and we're not figuring out the answers, maybe we should let some other people try. And so maybe we should shift from the white male-dominated culture to have a more balanced culture in science. And maybe, just maybe, some of the people that we're pushing out of the pipeline have the answers, if only we would let them speak and listen to them and be heard. And so that's why we created Minorities in Shark Sciences, because ultimately we can't solve any problems without everyone having a seat at the table and having a voice.
Jasmine, thank you so much for that. And I'm again following the chat, and oh man, everything that you say resonates so much. And I love your analogy about having everybody at the table. This whole discussion, ultimately, it is about our oceans. And again, the innovation and the drive that we need, and including every voice and every passion is what we need. So you've just, you've brought this conversation just exactly to where it needs to be. So look, I'm going to now carry on. And I think for today's panel, perhaps introduce some gender balance. I'm going to call on and introduce Stefan Fritz. He's the managing director of the German Marine Research Consortium. And look, he's been involved in ocean organizations for the last 15 years. Most recently, he co-initiated the Ocean Plastics Lab, and it was a traveling science exhibition that was actually following up on some of the G7 work on plastics. Canada proudly was part of that. And so, you know, he is, has a lot of experience in terms of outreach and ambassadorial work. So Stefan, you are involved in a number of activities that aim at fostering early career ocean professionals in the ocean decade, and you're leading the coordination of the All Atlantic Ocean Youth Ambassador Program. In the context of all these activities, what does diversity in ocean science mean to you? And what difference will it make in achieving the Ocean Decade's ambitions? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine. And really, honestly, genuinely, thank you for the invitation to speak today. Really, I've been following the chat too. Fantastic. The presentations really genuinely interesting and inspiring. And I think the question you just asked me, Jasmine answered it best. And in a way, that was also the motivation for being here and for some of the work that we do. So Jasmine said, if there's no diversity in science, there's no diversity of ideas, of thought, of critical dialogue. And ultimately that means less innovation. And if the challenge is to bring together the best of ocean science for sustainable development, then we're going to need that critical dialogue, we're going to need that diversity, and we're going to have to make a difference in the ocean. Otherwise, it's going to be business as usual. So I work for the German Marine Research Consortium. We are the National Association of Marine Research Institutions in Germany. And our job is to bring this incredibly diverse community together in Germany and be part of the international community. And so we've initiated a number of and been part of a number of international networks. And the idea has always been the same. And that is to bring together people from different places to increase networking within marine science. But from our perspective, because I'm actually sitting in Brussels and I'm a lobbyist for marine science, one of our biggest interests here in Brussels is to create a narrative from that diversity and to bring that narrative to politicians and to other interest groups and to showcase what's being done in marine science to understand and tackle the challenges of the ocean. Now, Germany has offered to host the kickoff event to the UN Ocean Decade on the 1st of June. And as part of that discussion, we as an organization and as part of our networks, we've been brainstorming about what is it that we can contribute with the kind of capacities that we have. And being a network and working within networks, offering something that's a network came naturally. And so what we've now initiated, and it's had to go through several mutations because of the COVID challenge. So initially we planned to organize 3 days for early career ocean professionals in Berlin as part of the launch events, but we've now had to move virtual. And the question really was, well, how can we make that work in a way that is still something special? And the great thing about a virtual environment is, and this event I think is fabulous for showcasing that, is you can bring an incredibly diverse community together in a fairly efficient manner. And so essentially the plan is on the 1st to 2nd of June is to go once around the world in a live event, non-stop, following the sun around the world, offering a platform, a virtual platform for early career ocean professionals to showcase what it is they're working on, their plans for the ocean decade, to invite critical discussion, reflection, and to broaden the community, and basically offer a platform for individuals and for groups to then jump from there to be part of the decade. Because following the June events, there are some workshops planned, conferences, labs, many things are being planned by IOC, and DFO has been wonderfully supportive of that, and the German Ministry of Research and the EU, and this is something that we need to feed into, especially with young people, and to give them a place at those tables. And we thought this was the best thing we can offer. So to keep it short, one slide I'd like to share. Just a second, there we go. So from today, you see only 2 followers so far. We've set up 2 sites for VCOPS, Virtual Early Career Ocean Professional Day. I invite you to join, to follow, and we will update soon. We will have a call for proposals and for moderators, for content. And again, we're a little bit behind because of all the changes we've been having to make in the organization, but I think we've got a good idea. We've got a great network of international network of people that are excited about this. Thank you to DFO for your incredible support. And we hope that all of you out there can bring your ideas and share them with a bigger community. And we're going to make our effort and do our best to take that and then bring it into some of the activities of the decade. So thanks for the invitation again.
Stefan, thank you very much for that. And I know that you'll get lots of pickup and attention for your initiative. So bon chance. The L'Oreal UNESCO for Women in Science National and Regional Young Talent Program is implemented by L'Oreal subsidiaries around the world with the help of UNESCO, national commissions, and field offices. It aims to promote and encourage young women researchers who represent the future of science. Our next speaker, Dr. Leah Siegelman, received the L'Oreal UNESCO France Fellowship for Women in Science in 2019 for her innovative, and I might say slightly intimidating, work. The methodology was using satellite observations of the ocean to better understand its role in climate regulation, which included everything from using ocean mammals to help track currents, as well as supercomputers. Truly a formidable scientist. Leah, why do you feel it's important to have such a program at a global scale to support women and girls in science? And maybe talk to us just as colleagues about what it meant for you personally to win that L'Oreal UNESCO prize.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. So yeah, as Catherine said, I'm Leah Siegelman. I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography in San Diego, California. And I received the UNESCO L'Oreal Fellowship for Women in Science when I was conducting my PhD research on ocean physics. And I believe that having a UNESCO fellowship prize like this is really important because it allows to support young women to pursue their scientific endeavors. And I mean, I received it for ocean science, but the program goes well above and beyond it. It covers a very wide range of fields from epidemiology to medicine, cancer research, astrophysics, you name it. And I believe this initiative in the long run will enhance diversity in the field of STEM. And as our previous speaker said, it will allow to contribute to diversity, to make science more inclusive, and in the finality, it's going to generate new knowledge. So, and also by doing all of that, this UNESCO L'Oreal Fellowship for Women in Sciences is a great source of inspiration for young women and girls. You know, you see portraits of women scientists in the airports, in the subway, and then young women and girls think, oh, you know, I can do that too. I also have a space there. I belong there. I'm legitimate. And then for me personally, winning this fellowship allowed me to pursue a very dear research project to me when I was doing my PhD. I was allowed to spend 6 months at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California, working alongside experts in satellite data and analyzing a high resolution model of the ocean. And thanks to all of this expertise, I was able to show that the ocean plays a key role in regulating our climate. More precisely, I looked at the role of very fine scale features that populate in the ocean all around the globe and show how those features were key to transporting heat from the ocean interior to the surface and the atmosphere. Therefore, you know, playing a key role in global ocean temperature rise and in regulating our climate. And yeah, I really emphasize that this is very important to take into account in climate prediction if we want to have predictions that are accurate as possible. So, and also for me personally, winning this prize gave some visibility to my research and some financial independence and autonomy, which is crucial for any scientist. And so I believe it allows me to be here with you today to share my experience, and hopefully I can also inspire other women to really pursue a career in the exciting and very fulfilling fields of STEM. So yeah, thank you very much again for having me here.
Leah, thank you very much. And I think you're completely right that these kinds of national and international awards and recognition do precisely what you described, lifting up you personally, but also, you know, being a role model for young women coming forward. So thank you for that. We'll shift now to talk to, actually, as I've had a chance to go through the biographies, another shark enthusiast. I want to introduce Francesca Tropman. She's the founder of the Love Oceans Society. She has a master's in marine biology and is an emerging leader in the area of ethical tourism, an avid diver with a particular interest in sharks. More substantively, though, her organization, Love the Oceans, is focused on some incredibly important projects in Mozambique, including trying to develop and establish marine protected areas. So I would say welcome, Francesca, and we would love to hear from you on your journey creating an NGO, founding an NGO, and maybe talk to us a little bit about the women and the girls that you're reaching through your work. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to see everyone and talk to everyone. Yeah, my name's Francesca. I run Love the Oceans. I started it when I was at university, and it's been quite a journey. I've been doing that ever since. And I started initially a little bit like Jasmine for a passion for sharks. It kind of grew from there. So my interest was in the shark fin trade. So I came from it from a science angle, but I had noticed as well that there weren't very many women actually running NGOs as well as in science in general. So it is something that has obviously been a massive passion of mine, being a female founder, and our executive director is also a woman as well. So it's something that we've always felt very passionate about. And I mean, it's a well-known fact that bringing women into the conversation, women form half of the population. So just ignoring half of the population it means that you're not going to have effective management and effective rules that are going to benefit everybody. And yeah, I mean, it's been shown that countries with more women in parliament are more likely to set aside protected land areas and ratify international treaties. And so bringing more women into the conversation is absolutely essential. Good community buy-in and stakeholder management leads to effective conservation. So understanding who the users are and utilising their knowledge increases effectiveness. So working with women is something that we've felt really passionate about in terms of creating a management strategy for our marine protected area that we're working to establish. And we work as an NGO, we work in partnership with the community that we're based in. And so it's something that is so important to listen to people. And I was listening actually to Christina Mittermeier the other day, another amazing woman in science, and she was saying that it's kind of like a boat. If you have a boat that's sinking, you don't want half of the population bailing out. You want everyone on board to be bailing out. And that's really where we're at with some of the environmental issues that we're facing, like the climate crisis and things like that. You need everyone involved in the conversation, everyone pulling their weight to be able to reach a goal and be able to achieve and come together and yeah, be able to solve the climate issues and other environmental issues that we face as well. So I think it's so important that everyone gets a voice, and that's a lot of our work is about providing opportunities for people to further their education if they want to, and a lot of that is working with women, because you never know, like the person that actually can solve the climate crisis could exist already. Like they very well could exist already, and as Jasmine said with the pipeline, they could have got pushed out the pipeline, and we'll never know, and you've lost that benefit to humanity through prejudice. So it's so important that everyone gets their voice and everyone gets an opportunity to be involved. And yeah, that's what I feel very passionately about, and our organization has worked with in that space for a while.
Thank you so much. And I would say the passion of all of our speakers has perhaps led to my failure as a moderator. I've been looking at the time, and you know, it's just been inspiring to hear from each of you. So we'll have possibly a shorter period of time for questions, but my goodness, it's been incredible to get the conversation going. So perhaps I'll invite speakers to just come back on with the cameras. And just a reminder to you to submit a question. You can put something in the Q&A function or through the comments in Facebook. So maybe I'll just kick off and folks will be able to see the Q&As. I might just start with a question from Sandra Ribucco. And it's a question to Kristen. Do you think the large number of women that give up on science, is it due to maternity? Is it taking time out for families? Do you have a perspective on that?
It is definitely one of the factors. And it is this or limited availability often for daycare, especially when you have smaller children. But it's not only this having the baby, but it's more this, the age factor is not the same when you have your publications are not the same when you have a break of 1-2 years, you're out, and you won't be able, and you shouldn't, nobody should work weekends and nights, and that should be something which should be recognized as well. It's men and women have to take the same responsibility if they want, and both should have the possibility to go back to work to the amount they want. And if I have 3 papers less, then I have 3 papers less, but maybe I'm a good person. And so I think when hiring people, especially for research positions, you have to look at the whole picture, not only at the age factor, not only at the publications, not only how often are you cited. It's about how inspiring is your work, how much can you give back to society, and as well those extracurricular activities which are not pure science. How much do you also contribute to that? So there's this whole, people are taking time off, but it's really this also coming back and maybe not being the same. It's not, things change with the baby. But there as well, of course, other factors like not recognizing that not everybody thinks the same way. People are different, women and men are different, women among them are different. So accepting and acknowledging and appreciating differences, and to see it more as a wealth than what it's sometimes seen is, yeah. And I think we have to be also a bit more patient with ourselves. Women themselves are also sometimes more critical to other women than they are to men. And it's not that women have to do more than men. I think that is something we all have to recognize. Why should they?
Yeah. Thank you very much for your perspective, Kristen. And you know, you reflect, I think, the academy generally, and some of the rules and frameworks about how people are noticed, and publications. That's certainly one measure. So it'll be interesting if we can start to push and move some change. Look, there's a general question that, again, I'm sure I'll be totally fired and never asked to moderate anything again if we take too long, but I wouldn't mind touching, Jasmine, I wouldn't mind throwing a question to you. Anuia, I hope I pronounced her name properly, from India, you know, her question: how can we prevent gender discrimination in the field of ocean science? I might toss that to you and to Francesca, just for quick opinions and perspectives before we move on. Is that okay?
Sure. So there's a couple of ways. It starts when we're young. So getting girls connected with science early, encouraging girls and young women to be excited about science. I know that sometimes we have this tendency as in society to decide what people like and don't like based on their gender. I've been at events where I'm giving out little toy sharks and a little girl runs up to try and get one and the mom says, "Oh no, those are for boys." And I say, "No, I'm a girl. I like sharks. Sharks are cool." And so it starts with not saying, "Oh, little girls shouldn't get dirty. Little girls shouldn't be playing in tide pools. Little girls shouldn't be playing with sharks. Little girls should be playing with dolls. Little girls can play with whatever they want and they can do whatever they want. And you should be encouraging and not discouraging." And once you start putting those ideas in their heads and you start saying things like, "Oh, people are going to like you less if you come off as too smart," or "People are going to like you less if you answer the questions in class," when we should be saying, if you know the answer, say it. Be right. Be excited about science. Don't dim your sparkle for anyone. That's where it starts.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Yeah,
Francesca?
I would say representation is really important, because if women are there to hire other women and girls, then that means that there's going to be more people getting in and changing that balance, and then also creating safe spaces and making sure that people coming into the area know that it is a safe space, and they're not gonna, and also as an organization, like I'm sure Jasmine and Erica feel the same, like you have a responsibility to create that safe space yourself and make sure that people coming in know that you will not tolerate discrimination. So I feel like that's also an important point to look at the organizations themselves and their kind of responsibility policy on that.
I would love to add to that.
Sure.
So I've heard a lot of discussion on the leaky pipeline, and I love that Jasmine pointed out that for many people it's a cliff, not a pipeline. We also have to remember that the pipeline is a systemic structure that was built long ago by other people. And in response to the question that Dr. Isenzi responded to, it was built for men that had women at home to raise the children. And so thinking about how we look at those systems and how we redesign those systems to support all of us is really important. And recognizing that those drips, like many of us on the panel and many of the people I see in the chat, they don't just go down the drain and disappear. They're doing amazing things in the world. And so there are women who are still scientists, but they just might not be on that traditional tenure track. And I saw a really wonderful talk recently by Professor Amanda Messino, who proposed that instead of thinking of it as a pipeline, we think of it as a network of rivers and deltas that are actually interconnected. And we are still part of this big, important community and are impactful, even if we are not in the pipeline.
Thank you very much, Erica. That's really, really insightful. So when I think about International Day and hopefully young girls from around the world watching this, there's a question in the chat from Renee Richardson. For an undergraduate student, what do you recommend to do during undergraduate work to prepare for graduate studies? I might say Leah, Erica, anyone, please, I'll open it up, just some advice.
Maybe I may start. Yes. I would say ocean science is a very broad field. You can be a biologist, a physicist, a lot of things. So really, of course, like with a scientific background, but I think you should really do what inspires you the most, what you enjoy the most, because that's really where you will thrive. But then there's a very broad range of topics you can choose.
Hi, if I may also jump into
Please.
that. It's indeed, it's follow your heart, or follow your what you're striving to do, because whenever you do a higher education in science, this is a tough period. It's not easy. There are it's a lot of sleepless nights, and so you really have to burn for it. And I think especially in ocean science and also outside, I mean, I also changed the kind of the side of the story. I'm now more at the end of the value chain and not so much producing data anymore. But I think it's if you burn for ocean science and or marine biology, be physics, chemistry, then it's the field for you. And because jobs are definitely not out on the street, you have to be creative. And a lot of people start, but then it's difficult to continue, not only for women but also for men. So really burning for it is important, and then find your field, find your niche, find your field of interest, and then you can also be successful.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And in the chat, I saw a shout out that there's even room for social scientists in ocean science. And that's the background that I come from. And there's no less passion. And I think Jasmine said it best, you know, let's set a broad table and bring as many as we can into the table. So I am watching the time, and I think we do have an opportunity for a couple more questions. And one of the notes, and it's just the, you know, we are all managing through a global pandemic at the moment, you know, and all of the participants on this session from all around the world. So COVID has impacted women and other diversity groups more. How can we help them through this? And I mean, there's a specific question there about governments and grants, but it's a bit of a reflection about you know, how research has been paused as a result of the pandemic. People actually aren't necessarily getting out on vessels to do research. You do research often in very close quarters. You know, what do you think the recovery looks like for female researchers? And maybe I'll ask someone to answer that and jump in. Kristen, I see you.
Yeah, I can jump on that. I think it has been and is a tough time for everybody. And it's definitely not the same writing a paper when you have a few kids running around, or even also when you're alone as a woman. It's not the same. You don't have the exchange with your colleagues. You don't have the inspiration. You don't have the same environment. And there's definitely an impact on ocean science in general. There's this impact on female researchers and students as well, not being able. And I think it's just something where we have to accept as well. And I think that's actually a big step, that it's not the same anymore. But we have to be more flexible, and also taking a few of the positive sides we have now. I mean, there's more flexible work environment. I think a lot of research institutions adopted it. You don't have to be in the lab all the time, or you don't have to sit there. You can also do your work when you're from home. Having there this more flexible environment also in the future, I think will be important to push again women at the forefront, and push everybody really to in the next 2 years really to go further. And the education suffered a lot, and especially girls couldn't go then anymore to school. And that's just like, we need the capacity, the local capacity as well to develop, to foster women to step up and be enabled to actually do that. And again, that's having this enabling framework of daycare, this enabling framework of mentoring women, and not leaving young female scientists alone at home when they try to solve an issue. And I think that's a huge task for the supervisors, a huge task for the bosses as well to take on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kristen. And, you know, again, I think as the globe goes through anything that has been this game-changing, such as the pandemic, I don't think we go through these without change. And I actually think that our flexibility, our ability to demonstrate different ways to get things done, I actually hope that's a bit of an engine and pushes things forward. Because clearly, you know, I remember early in my career, well, I couldn't possibly work from home with my 3 children, because how could that work? So me and the rest of the planet figured that out. So anyway, lots, I think that I hope the rebound will show a path forward. So look, again, what I thought I would do, it's a bit of a segue and setup in the questions. We've got a question from Jacqueline, and it is one for you, Erica, and it'll maybe be a segue into the virtual dive. So her question is, she likes the idea of the virtual reality headset. Is it possible for something like this to be shared for those who are interested in enhancing ocean literacy? And one of the issues she's identifying is the creation of partnerships, how to partner to get this kind of technology into into parts of the world that need really to get a greater understanding of the ocean. So perhaps we will punt that one to you.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. The answer is yes. And I'm currently leading research with the incredible team at Stanford's Virtual Human Interaction Lab to understand how these virtual environments and immersive virtual reality can enhance ocean science literacy, as well as connection and things like empathy. So when it comes to the human connection, one of my biggest wishes coming out of this pandemic and this crisis is that we really find new ways to connect to each other and connect to nature. And what's wonderful is at the Hydrus, we've led almost 1 million virtual dives now. Many of those were led during the pandemic. And so what's wonderful about this technology is it can act like a teleportation device to take you to places you've never been or may never go. And it can actually, and based on all of the science we've seen, it can recreate those feelings of presence and agency and empathy and all of that important connection. And the research that we're leading has a special focus on gender, race, and income, because we're really interested on how this can be made accessible more and more so. And when it comes to partnerships, this is not something that we can do alone. I've been very fortunate to work with National Geographic, to work with a range of tech companies that want to support this, with universities like Stanford, as well as organizations like the Smithsonian that are all very interested in this mission of open access oceans so that everyone can engage with and connect to marine environments, especially when they're so beautiful and so threatened. I think I hit all of the questions. Is that right? Did I miss any?
I think that you covered them off, and again, it's a perfect segue and setup as we conclude the more formal part of our discussion. I just wanted to actually extend apologies to folks who have been trying to get in and follow us on the Facebook link. There's been a bit of an issue there with respect to the translation. So we will certainly ensure, and folks will know, that the whole recording will be available on the oceandecade.org site. So again, we don't want anybody to miss a moment of the lovely conversation that we've had. So over to you, Erica, to walk us or help us dive in.
Absolutely. So if you have a smart device, you can use a QR code reader or your camera to point at this manta. And we've put it on a manta ray to play with the fact that manta rays have markings on their belly that are unique for each individual, like fingerprints or QR codes. And if you follow this link through the QR code, it will take you, hopefully you have the YouTube app, but it will take you into a virtual dive, which is a 360 video where you can move your phone around or drag with your finger to engage with the material. And apologies, this is all in English, but you can still go on a virtual dive with me. And so we used a very specialized camera that was able to collect footage from all directions. And if you have a cardboard viewer, now these range from like $5 to $15, depending on where you get it. And you can put your phone sideways into the viewer to have an even more immersive experience. What I'll also do is I'll drop the link to the YouTube video so you can watch it on your browser as well. And I will also share my screen so you can see what that looks like. And while I'm setting this up, I also want to say that when it comes to partnerships, one of my favorite ones right now is with Danny Washington at Big Blue and You and Maria Soleil at World Rise, because we are working on a podcast called 21st Century Mermaids, which hits on a lot of the topics that we just discussed. So definitely check that out. So I'm putting the link in the chat, and I will also share my screen.
Erica, thank you so much for sharing that video. That was just incredible. And what a great teaching tool. You can see the chat lighting up. Listen, before I just wrap and say a sincere thank you to all of the panelists, I just wanted to share a quote, and it was just something in the chat that came up, and I thought just so appropriate for this important International Day. And it's from Anissa Hassan, so in our chat, a 12-year-old who is inspired by marine biology. Thank you so much. You don't know how much it means to me. I will try to protect my coast and inspire future generations. So that's absolutely compelling from a young woman who has just had an opportunity to hear from such talented, committed, and insightful panelists. So on behalf of UNESCO, Fisheries and Oceans Canada, and all of our presenters, a huge thank you. And again, apologies for our technical issues, but the entire broadcast will be posted so that you'll be able to see it. So again, thank you so much. Merci beaucoup et bonne journée. Thank you very much. Bye all.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.